Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The results of the closed session from Board of Supervisors meeting of January 8 is as follows. A closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9B1, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, 2 cases. County Counsel, in one matter, no action was taken. In the other matter, the closed session was canceled. Secondly, closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators, county representatives, CAO and assistant CAO, Director of Human Resources and Risk Management, SEIU, regarding miscellaneous employees, human resources, with no action. Third, a closed session, conference with labor negotiator under Government Code Section 54957.6, Assistant CAO, HR Director, Calaveras County Deputy Sheriff's Association, DSA, was canceled. We now turn to the consent agenda, which are items expected to be non-controversial. They'll be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion. Board? Staff?
Yeah, well,
oops,
yep.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Item 4.
Okay, item 4 will be removed from the consent agenda. Any members of the public? Do I hear a motion on the balance?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes of 5-0. Item 4, Supervisor Callaway.
Clay,
Good morning.
the amount of this money for what we're doing just seemed, it wasn't clear to me. It was a lot of money for, could you just explain this?
Sure. About 3 years ago, the federal and state Department of Homeland Security developed what was called a Buffer Zone Protection Program, BZPP we refer it to. And it was essentially the feds and the state had looked at dams and reservoirs all over the country. And then each state prioritized each dam and reservoir over a period of time that they would inspect. The Army Corps of Engineers, and in fact the United States Army Command Unit, came to the county 2 years ago and looked at all of the lakes. We weren't privy to what their conclusion was, but based on all of the lakes that they surveyed in the county, they put them in a priority of some kind of queue, and then they came back to us last year and approached both the Tuolumne and Calaveras County Sheriff's Office and said that Maloney's Reservoir ranked high as a vulnerable freshwater target in California, as well as a bunch of other reservoirs and lakes in the state over the last couple of years. The Sacramento County Sheriff's Office administers the BZP program for state homeland security. And there was a meeting 8-9 months ago, and from that meeting, the state and federal homeland security already established an appropriation of dollars to be spent on each lake and dam, and they came to us and said there was $189,000 minus an administrative fee that would be earmarked for Maloney's for what they were calling target hardening. State and federal homeland security, both sheriff's offices and one of the state consultants looked at the dam and came up with a number of findings, several of which involved putting up fencing at unsecured areas, and putting up motion-sensitive cameras and infrared cameras, and signage. And then
saying what? Tourists keep out, terrorists keep out? And does Tuolumne have the same amount of money?
No. This is one pot of money that the state and the feds came to both counties and earmarked it. So they determined the dollar amount and then told us to back into that target hardening functions, which includes cameras and fencings and signage.
But we share this with Tuolumne. So do we just fence our side and not their side?
No. It is a bit disjointed, I agree. We were chosen as the lead county. Why, I don't have a really good understanding why, but we were selected as the lead county to administer the BZP for New Maloney's Reservoir, to put up fencing and cameras and work with the dam to implement these projects to target harden the facility.
I mean, the resolution addresses Tuolumne and Calaveras.
Correct.
Does that mean you'll be buying same on the Tuolumne side as the Calaveras side?
No. There's some entrance points to the dams that the state and the feds want chain link fenced. And then once they're chain link fenced, they want cameras so that nobody can get into them. And it was largely in a discharge area where water comes out that was vulnerable to people getting in.
So who maintains this?
The dam. Our sheriff's office is in charge of administering the grant, which will make sure that the items that I mentioned here are implemented. So they chose us as the lead county to work with Tuolumne, but pass through the expenditures and the revenue through our budget and then represent the grant for both counties.
Okay.
Why they did that, I don't know.
Okay, that's fine. But who's going to maintain this?
Once
And
it's
with
in
what
place,
funds?
then the dam. The dam would be responsible for maintenance after that point. We're responsible under this grant to
Just install.
install, correct. Purchase and install, and run it through our county budget rather than Tuolumne. And again, I don't have a good reason why we were selected as the lead county.
The dam, you mean Bureau of Reclamation?
There's Bureau of Reclamation involved. There's several federal agencies all working out of Folsom for this project.
Clay, have you been told where the images, the camera images, are going to be transmitted?
To Folsom. At their main dispatch center. And then there's a plan to link additional cameras and monitoring to both dispatch centers in Tuolumne and Calaveras sheriff's offices.
Okay.
So there'll be 3 points monitoring the dam at these sensitive points.
Yeah. You obviously know this, but others may not, that this is not the first step to secure that dam. And years ago, I built a fairly significant observation point. You know, there was a place where you could drive and look down on the dam. It was particularly useful during the construction of the dam, but the public no longer has access to those facilities. They're
Correct.
closed off several miles away. So.
I think you're right. I think this may be the first of multiple steps, not only involving Maloney's, but a good likelihood all the dams in the state, and somewhere someone has a prioritization list of all the dams and reservoirs, and it just so happened that in this fiscal year, Maloney's popped up as the highest priority at the time, through an independent analysis that the state and federal Department of Homeland Security had conducted, and then using Sacramento County Sheriff's Office as the administering point, and then they in turn got with the local agencies and selected one as the lead.
Good.
Clay, I'm just sort of in a general way curious about this. I know we have limited natural resources and there's a lot of discussion about the economy. What information do we have about, if any, about specific threats to this dam or dams in general, and is there any, is this related to specific concerns or a more generalized approach?
Generalized, I've never seen any specific targets against the dam, but I do remember in the mid-'90s when Brent was CAO, there was a lot of activity with the FBI on freshwater dams in California as terrorism targets.
We just
That
have
was
dead
pretty well
bodies.
widely known.
Any further discussion? Is there a motion on this topic?
I'll move this item number 4.
Second.
Motion and second by Thomas. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So done. We now move to public comments. 5 minutes per person, 15 minutes per topic. Anybody here to speak?
Good morning. Joyce Teckel from MyValleySprings.com, Colleen Platt from MyValleySprings.com. MyValleySprings.com is happy to present to the Board of Supervisors and the Community Development Agency the summary of results from the Valley Springs Community Design Workshop hosted by MVS on October 24th and 27th, 2007. The workshop was led and facilitated by the Local Government Commission, which is a Sacramento nonprofit organization dedicated to helping local governments and their constituents build livable, resource-efficient communities. In 1991, the LGC wrote the Awani Principles for Resource-Efficient Communities and paved the way for the Smart Growth Movement. The purpose of the Valley Springs Community Design Workshop was to bring together residents and other stakeholders from the greater Valley Springs area to initiate discussion toward a common vision for the future of the community. It is hoped this report can help inform the update of the Valley Springs Community Plan and the County General Plan. In keeping with the next steps noted in the summary report, the LGC and MVS partnered with the Calaveras Council of Governments and ultimately with the Community Development Agency to apply for a Caltrans community-based transportation planning grant for the greater Valley Springs area. That grant was submitted Friday, January 11th. On behalf of the LGC and MVS, we thank the chairman of the board, Supervisor Walensky, and Supervisor Claudino for providing letters of support for the Caltrans grant application. If awarded, the grant will fund a community planning document generated by a highly participatory public design charrette process. MVS will continue to facilitate a grassroots community planning effort with broad-based public participation. In cooperation with the local University of California Cooperative Extension Director, MVS secured funding that has been used to hire a graduate student intern to begin compiling baseline information specific to the Valley Springs study area identified during the Community Design Workshop. The intern hopes to identify a doctoral thesis topic related to the urban-rural interface based upon her work in Calaveras County. MVS is facilitating the information of a committee, the formation of a committee of citizens representing a diversity of interest to offer public input on the Valley Springs Community Plan. Finally, MVS has applied for funds to conduct a community image survey. MyValleySprings.com will faithfully pursue its mission, which is to promote responsible growth and development through public participation in community planning in order to preserve the quality of rural life in the greater Valley Springs area. Thank you very much. Onward.
Thank you. Other comments this morning?
Good morning. I'm Larry Cornish with Mark Twain St. Joseph's Hospital, and I hope that I can do this on a monthly basis, come over and give you kind of an update on the activities that we're doing at the hospital and how they affect the overall community. And what I'd like to do is to kind of start back on last Wednesday night, where we had our Hospital Foundation annual dinner. The Hospital Foundation at the dinner announced their financial support of a Women's Center of Excellence here in Calaveras County and the introduction of digital mammography for our community. Members there included Shirley Ryan and Linda Churches and Maury Hoekstra. Supervisor Russ Thomas was there, and Jeff Tuttle is also a member or a trustee at our Hospital Foundation. So that was a great kickoff to a campaign that they've already raised about $500,000 to support the Women's Center of Excellence and the digital mammographies here in our community. Last Friday we had a great celebration around lunchtime. We have a longtime cook at our hospital named Carmen Jufra. Some of you may know Carmen. We named our cafeteria Carmen's after her many years of service there. So how many of you have ever been in a restaurant that didn't have a name? I didn't think so. So that was quite an honor for us to be able to present that to Carmen. Tomorrow, we're giving a presentation in Stockton. Our hospital has what we call the Community Grants Program, and we are awarding $18,425 to the local Take It to Heart Foundation. The Take It to Heart Foundation is a organization that the hospital started in partnership with the American Heart Association about 3 years ago. It was formed to support the mission of the American Heart Association, and the money from this grant is going to allow the Take It to Heart Foundation to implement a Family Fit program in all of the 4th and 5th grade classes in Calaveras County in this next year. We're working with John Brophy on that, and we're real excited about implementing the FIT program, the Family Fit program, to fight child obesity, which obviously leads to diabetes or heart disease. Jeannie Boyce was one of our original Women in Red, and Shirley Ryan is a member of the Take It to Heart Foundation, so we're real excited about that. On the 22nd, for about the 10th year in a row, we are hosting the annual American Cancer Society Daffodil Days to increase awareness in our community about cancer and raise money to support research and treatment for cancer. As I mentioned, we've been doing this for 10 years now, and obviously it's a great organization and it helps our community by our involvement. On the 24th, we're hosting the Chamber Mixer at the hospital. I hope that all of you can attend. I know you'll be hearing about that more. You can learn more about the programs and services that we have at the hospital. And if you're really inclined, you can take a tour with one of our tour guides. On the 29th, we're taking part in an emergency preparedness functional drill. We have to do these drills at least once a year. This year, the county is a partner in the drill. Colleen Tracy's been your lead on that activity. We're actually going to see our functional drill has a scenario of a surge of infectious patients that we're going to have to set up an alternative care site at the hospital and move people away from the emergency room so we don't infect everybody else that happens to be down there. So it's going to be an interesting drill. It's about a 4-hour exercise, and that's on Tuesday the 29th. On the 31st, we have a ribbon cutting ceremony at our Family Medical Center in Angels Camp. We've done some recent renovation and expansion of the clinic, adding 3 more treatment rooms and some medical record storage rooms. And we're real excited about that, and the Chamber of Commerce is going to be there to cut the ribbon with us. And finally, February is National Heart Day. Obviously, that's in our hearts too. February 1st is actually National Heart Day. We encourage everybody to wear red. You'll probably hear more about that. Carmen's Cafe will be serving heart-healthy meals to the staff. And just as a reminder, any of our county employees who come over to the hospital for lunch on Fridays get the employee discounts. They also can get their blood pressure checked for free. So I wanted to pass that on to you and everybody else that's listening out there. Any questions? Any thoughts?
Larry, on the digital mammography, is that going to be available at like the Arnold Clinic, or is that just at San Andreas? Or?
We're working on the plan, but it seems reasonable that the 2 units that we have now would be the first 2 to be replaced. The one in Arnold,
in Arnold,
the one in San Andreas at the hospital.
Okay.
Yes.
Larry, I'd just like to express my delight in the naming of the cafeteria restaurants. I can't think of an honor more well-earned in this county than Carmen's. It's the right name for it.
Yeah, it has turned out to be have quite an impact on the entire hospital and the community, perhaps, too. Thank you.
Before you go, the other board members may know this, but the announcement was made at the dinner last Wednesday about this money that they raised for that mammography effort. And the remarkable thing about that is they had a fundraising committee that met at the end of December, and by the 9th of January, they were announcing that 3 checks came in totaling $500,000. And that's just absolutely mind-boggling, that the commitment of members of our community. Just I was shocked by the generosity and the heartfelt need for it. So anyway, congratulations. It was very impressive.
It says a lot about our community, doesn't it?
Sure does.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comments? Hearing none, we'll move to item number 6, discussion possible action regarding the adoption of an ordinance repealing and reenacting Chapter 16.24 of the County Calaveras Code.
Skipped one.
We're skipping?
No, you said 6 and went to 7.
Well, we may be reading from 2 completely different...
We get a new agenda?
Excuse me?
I mean, apologize. It's not the version I have.
What version do you have?
Session, number 6.
The which?
Closed session.
Well, they've got something different here.
That's 7. That's not what I have.
What's the date on the top right
Did we
corner?
hand out something subsequent to the packet?
Well, let me ask what the public has for item number 6. So we seem to have 2 different agendas here.
Well,
Obviously, we have the right agenda.
I was just trying to read what I have, but apparently
I have.
I'd like to establish, I guess at this point, what exactly agenda are we operating off of so that we can act according to our obligations.
Well, we're in the same time frame, so it doesn't really matter if you do 6.
What was
They're both
published?
in the same 9:15 time frame.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know which agenda was published, which would be the
You read
official
it into the agenda. Let's just do it, and
But-
then we'll go to 7. It's going to be next.
I
printed this yesterday off our website, so
This is the public agenda
that's the one that was on the website yesterday afternoon.
This is, in fact, the one
that you have.
we have. I haven't a clue as to why they would have something different than we did.
We try to keep staff in the
I think the only change here is,
6 and 7.
It's an order. It's an order reversal. Is that what?
well, I'd say go ahead and deal with what you think is number 6.
All right.
But the item that's missing is a closed session pursuant to Government Code, public employment, whether or not.
Which has been duly published, apparently.
Right.
So we will
So
proceed
you have
to
the
that
ability to
after
go
our
into
number
that.
6.
You have the ability to go into that if you so choose.
Does that relate to item number 8 on my agenda? Is that what the closed session is for?
Can I see your agenda?
Can we take
yes.
about a 90-second break here?
I believe we have a small kerfuffle, and we will try to resolve that. We will take a 5-minute recess to resolve these questions. Right, we used that couple of minutes wisely, and
We did, huh?
I'm hoping.
2 minutes today were used wisely?
Miracles could happen, Tom. Item number 6, which appears not on the public agenda but on the board packet, was erroneously placed there and is actually supposed to be considered by the board on the 22nd of this month. So we will not be talking about an ordinance repealing and reenacting Chapter 16.24 of the County of Calaveras Code. This has to do with standards for dedications of land. It's Quimby Act considerations, basically, and that will be put off till the 22nd. We will therefore move to item number 7 on ours, and I believe it's number 6 on the public on the agenda that was published, which is a closed session, county council and board matter, section 54957, public employment, and a second closed session actually is 8. Considered a close as well? No.
No.
Then we will move back to a resolution under item 7 on the public document, item number 8 on the board packet. So we will now recess for closed session.
Well,
In the closed session pursuant, in the closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, no action was taken. We now bring item 8, discussion and possible action regarding a resolution establishing a new 4-year term for James C. Jones to serve as County Council.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Any discussion?
Oh, yes.
It was close.
Yeah.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no nays, it's unanimous.
Your signing bonus is in the mail.
Thank you very much.
Actually, that wasn't a correct or accurate.
Those calls start coming in.
But thanks for the sentiment, Bill. On board matters, discussion possible action regarding appointment of applicants to various committees and commissions to serve under the jurisdiction of the Board of Supervisors. I note that under this item that we have no cases in which there are more than 2 applicants for a single position, unless any board member wishes to deconsider.
Unless I misunderstand, that's not entirely accurate.
Okay.
On the very first one, Steve, the Commission on Agency, District 1 has 1 vacancy, and they have 2 applicants. And I'm wondering if there is precedent for having like a alternate for that.
There is a precedent for that, and I apologize for not catching that. Do you wish to make a recommendation to us as to who should be the...
My recommendation at this point would be Suzanne Ekblom for the commission member and Sophie Baker as her alternate.
Okay, with that, then there are no other...
I'd say one correction here, Mr. Chair. On the Domestic Animal Advisory Committee, it shows we had a late application from Brenda Moeller. Brenda Moeller is not in District 3, but is in District 4. There is not I want to say an opening for the primary. There's only an opening for the alternate. So I would like it to reflect that Brenda would be the appointment as the alternate.
Thank you, Supervisor Tryon. I would like to announce that we do have 3 recent applications for appointments which were not part of the board packet. They include for Library Commission, District 3, Patricia Williams for an unexpired term to 12/10. For the Domestic Animal Advisory Committee, the licensed kennel owner Susan Maroney for an unexpired term to 12/10. And the aforementioned alternate from District 4, Brenda Moeller, for an unexpired term. Well, actually, that would not be for an unexpired term. That's simply as an alternate. With those plus...
I just want to clarify something. What was brought to my attention yesterday, Susan Maroney will not be the alternate. She'll be the rep. And the reason is because Michelle Rugo is the rep, but she's the president, so she can't be the rep, too.
Well,
I
not
don't think
quite,
that's the
but
case.
it's close. What it is it's hard. There's only a few kennel owners, and the kennel representative is required on Domestic Animal Advisory. And since Susan is a kennel owner, if she becomes the kennel representative, then that opens up one, and I think she lives in your area.
She lives in San Andreas.
So it opens up a position on in his district for Domestic Animal Advisory. Right. Michelle is in Tom's district.
No, but Michelle called me and talked to me yesterday, and I guess there's something in the bylaws that says because she's now the president in District 4, she cannot vote.
That has nothing to do with Susan.
But she said that the way the bylaws read, that she can't be the rep, she has to be an alternate. Michelle
That's right, but that's in District 4.
And that's what Brenda Moeller is District 4. I'm talking about Brenda now.
Oh, I thought you said Susan.
Yeah, it's two different things.
Okay.
Yeah, but Susan, the kennel, she moved from rep to kennel.
That's right. So Michelle will be the...
Well, wait a minute.
I don't agree with that interpretation, but...
I mean, I don't know what the bylaws say, she's the board's appointee, Now, if the Domestic Advisory Committee decides to make her the chair, that doesn't take away her status as my appointee. So if she is no longer chair, and you make Brenda the primary, then
That's right.
Michelle's out, and I don't want Michelle to be out. I want Michelle to hold on to the primary position.
Somebody needs to talk to somebody in the domestic animal, because that's what Michelle told me yesterday.
I would be interested to see whether they have adopted bylaws that might contradict that statement, but in any event, they have not come before the board, and that appointment stands.
I
So-
think I would agree. I think let Michelle be the representative. She could be non-voting because of their internal workings. Brenda can go to the meetings and vote if Michelle isn't the vote. But what Tom's saying is Michelle is the primary appointee from District 4.
Okay.
But when you speak to Michelle, why don't you ask her to call county council and discuss the issue with county council, and maybe send down a copy of their bylaws? Because it's my understanding this is a board committee.
Correct.
And so if the board appoints people to it, I don't think the committee can in and of itself create bylaws that are inconsistent with where the board wishes to go. So I think maybe county council needs to take a look at that.
And there's no reason
You know, if the board has to
president.
redo it, it can come back at a later date, but I'm not ready to take Michelle off the primary position at this point.
Okay, with that resolution of the Domestic Animal Advisory Committee appointments and Bill's appointment of an alternate, or suggestion of an appointed alternate and primary for District 1, I believe we could act on this as a whole unless there's any objections to any of the people who have applied serving on their committee.
Is there a reason that we should read the other names into the record? Just
They're in the record by virtue of the only names I read were the additional.
okay.
Then I'd move the appointments, Mr. Chair.
I'll second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. We now move to review of correspondence, reports, and various matters of concern. Today, let's start with Russ.
Oh, sure.
Well, or if he defers, somebody else.
Well, let me get my...
I'll start.
Okay.
I'll just go.
All right, we'll start with Marita, followed by Russ, then Bill.
I have Calaveras Public Power Authority meeting tomorrow, and I did go to the Domestic Animal Advisory Committee last week. Clay made a presentation and showed the schematics of the new animal shelter when that happens. The Dr. Sincerian, who's the vet representative, and there's another retired vet on the Domestic Animal Advisory Committee, had some real concerns with the design in terms of there was a lot of workflow areas and encapsulating the air. There were too many entrances into where the animals were kept, and they thought that was a concern. And that was true of both of them. So, Brent, I'm really not sure. One was done by Hathaway, the other was done by Nocton Lewis. Neither one of them seemed to have some significant issues that needed to be corrected. So I'm not sure where that's going to be in terms of capital improvement projects and, of course, location. And that's what triggered my email to you about the location of the shelter, but also the design, because there is some money they would like to proceed, but right now they seem to have two plans that aren't working.
And my general thought would be they probably should be placed on hold for a couple of months. The reason being until we resolve whether or not we're going to buy the property to the north and what that therefore means to the siting of an animal shelter. And one of the issues certainly right now is access to that property, which could I'll tell you when I get to my point of speaking, but
Okay.
we're addressing the issue. To me, at some point, it's like dealing with the jail. We've been dealing with kind of generic designs and pods, but at some point, you have to stop until you know what the site's going to be. I think you need to resolve the jail and the court and the property to the north before you figure out what to do with the siting of the shelter. I know that's not what everybody's going to want to hear, but I just think the practicality is that those are, at this moment as we sit here, I think a higher priority to resolve and in turn affects what happens to the animal shelter.
Okay. I'll get back to play on that then. Unless he's listening.
Russ?
Okay, I do have a number of things that I want to talk about under correspondence, but first of all, let me talk about board responsibilities this week. There is going to be a meeting actually tonight at 6 o'clock at the Copperopolis Elementary School to talk about some concerns and the funding considerations for the proposed Copperopolis K through 8 middle school, elementary middle school. There's been some recent controversy down there about the timing on actually pulling the trigger on getting that school started. So there's going to be a significant meeting tonight that I'll be attending. And then, let's see. Also, I'm an alternate on the Emergency Medical Services Oversight Committee, and I'll be going to that meeting on Thursday night. And on Friday morning, I'm more or less hosting a delegation from Tuolumne County to come over from their solid waste department to look at the CAM facility. The Waste Management has a pending application for approval to start taking some portions of waste products there at the facility.
From Tuolumne County?
Well,
You mean tires, or are you
no,
talking
no. Well,
garbage?
if you recall, some weeks ago, I talked about the possibility of setting up a crumb rubber production facility there.
That's tires.
Yeah, the tires. And it seems to me that we could maximize our probability of getting some grant funding if we did that particular concept on a regional basis, so that we would involve Tuolumne and Calaveras and Amador in this issue of the tires.
Does this meet within the current permitting authorization of CAM?
Yeah, yeah.
I thought
So
they,
we're
I thought
talking
they
the
were
tire,
already
the tire
doing
and the rubber issue.
Well, they are, as I understand it, they have put that permit in a somewhat of a, the term is, it comes to my mind as it has been idling. You know,
Okay.
they have not been taking the amount of tires that they had previously been allowed to take, which is about 2 million tires a year. And that, Mr. Selman isn't here, but that they are scheduled to be on the Planning Commission agenda soon to revisit that. But the facility isn't limited to merely tires. I mean, they also have some allowable construction waste, not wood, but concrete debris, lath and plaster, and that kind of stuff that could go in that facility. And it piqued the interest of a couple of people in Tuolumne County by virtue of the fact that they are trucking everything that in their waste stream to Oakland or someplace. They want to explore the possibility of being able to segregate some of that waste stream, and we might also look at that for our facility as well. I mean, I'm seeing these smiles. Has all this discussion come up before?
Oh, yeah. Well, Paul, I don't know, was it Paul Stein wanted to rent space out at Milton to outside people? I mean, it's okay to bring it up again. I mean, it's come up a couple of times, and the decision had been not to rent space out of our facility, because once you do, It reduces the lifespan of what we have, but
Well,
This doesn't
But that
impact our
doesn't-
facility other than diversion program potential.
yeah, what I'm talking about would ultimately have the potential of extending the life of our facility
Yeah,
if we
that's-
diverted
that's different.
some of the things that are going in there now.
to the
Ta-
CAM.
Take it to the CAM facility instead. For instance, at these satellite facilities, if we have an arrangement in our transfer stations now to receive construction debris, rather than hauling it down to the Milton Road facility, it could go over there, and I could get bruises on my head and shoulders from people in Copperopolis for having the trucks on the road. But anyway, what the thing that is intriguing to me is that the contract that we have with the waste management folks, there is a 6% of their gross that comes to the county, and 6% of nothing currently is nothing, but 6% of some revenue could plug some holes in our budget. So I don't know, I'm going to keep turning the crank on it until somebody says, pulls on my leash and says, don't do it anymore. Since flood control is a hot topic, I know that some of these things crossed your desks as well, but there's a flood protection law implementation workshop that's scheduled for Thursday, February 14th at the CSAC Conference Center. I don't know whether we can talk about this. We've got some time between now and February 14th, but my thought is that with the sensitivity to flood issues here in this county, that we maybe ought to pick somebody to go to that. I'm not volunteering for it, but just wanted to see if anybody feels the same way. We have... It's been my experience during this past year that on any given day, something will be the focus of our attention, and we have frequently said we're going to come back to that, and it doesn't resurface until somebody comes to the podium and says, what's happening to this? So there's this driveway slope issue that's very much in a concern in your supervisorial district, as it is in mine, actually. So I don't know how, has it ever, Brent, you've been around a long time, and you have been, Tom, but do you ever have any kind of like an old business, something that would be on the agenda just until it gets resolved? Like a weekly report on, has anything happened on this? Because this is going to come back to bite us if we don't do something about it.
Well, you can bring it up under correspondence every week if that's what you wish to do.
The Fire Chiefs Association met on that on January 9th. They came up with a lot of mitigations. Mike Miller, Public Works Director, responded to that letter. And there should be a copy in your mail or in your email. He did respond to that, and there will be a community or a subcommittee meeting of people on that driveway issue. And hopefully it'll be resolved in a month.
I think the broader answer to your question is, at least how I've functioned as CIO, is I always make notes of what you bring up and hopefully come back and have those scheduled. So, for example, your item this afternoon on the Williamson Act and the Ag Preserve, that's a follow-up to something that occurred in October when you had some questions and an elongated discussion about the procedures, so asked the department to come back, and that's what they've done. Now, some things take longer than others, and I did notice I'm preparing to leave and went through my notes from every board meeting to pass on to Bob. I think in the time I've been here, I've either brought back or set the stage for some things to come that after I left. Certain items I don't know where they fall. So, for example, you're talking about the slope thing. That's a very active, ongoing topic. And I know the Public Works Department and the Community Development has been working actively primarily with Merida, because the perception was that's where the biggest impact has been, and Merida's reacted to what I think has been thus far a District 3 response as to the issue. We can certainly, if it laps over to other departments or you want to have it, or other districts, or you want to have an update, we can certainly schedule an item. And I think in a arena like this, under comments, say what's going on with that, I'd like to have a discussion. The CIO can follow up and have that item scheduled. Scheduled.
I don't think we need to have it scheduled every week.
No, I'm not suggesting that, but I certainly, that's, in my view, what the public comment is in part about, is for you guys to raise things and said, whatever happened to so-and-so, or didn't we talk about this 3 months ago? I kind of look around to see if there are 3 of you that seem to want to talk about something, and then I'll schedule it and bring it back. I should add parenthetically, there are times that one person brings something up, and the other 4 are stone silent. My experience is, until I start seeing a couple of other waving heads, I don't schedule them, because that's the quiet way of saying you don't want something on the agenda. It's nice when you only have one more meeting, you can say whatever you want. But I mean, that's just the practicality of how it is. I remember one time I put something on that only one supervisor wanted, and I got ripped for doing it. So I've learned to be careful about that. That was not this round, that was a long time ago. But that's a meandering thing, that anytime you want to bring something up that you're concerned, we can see if the board wants to have something scheduled and we'll put it on.
Okay. Well, what comes to mind is the issue of Cosgrove Creek. You know, we had a report from Mr. Miller last week that you know the things are kind of moving along. Well, that's I'd like to have that resurface on a more or less a regular basis and get a report that, okay, well, what has
and
what
the reason
has
the mic
happened?
was there is because I suggested come and do the follow-up to the storm, because I knew people would show up and let the board know. And in fact, Mike has now put something in writing so that when I leave, Bob Lawton has something. Well, I figure he'll know because he's going to be looking at the creek where he's living.
Yeah.
He'll be up on it. But it's an interesting thing. There's a balance there. I do think staff needs to be selectively aware to bring things back, to have a public screening, if you will, of those. But it's a balance. The departments need to come forward, and you also need to highlight what's of importance, a priority to you. You guys are the bosses, so you can dictate that.
Okay. There was another thing that came out as a letter of stamped. The in stamp was December 26th, talking about a community assistance visit. This is it looks like a fairly significant meeting that's scheduled for tomorrow. It's the California Department of Water Resources has been retained by the Federal Emergency Management Agency to conduct this Region 9. Well, see, the FEMA Region 9 office is also going to be attending this thing. It has to do with flood control. Is this on our radar?
I don't remember the letter, so I don't.
Well, they've scheduled a meeting with Dave Pastizo to discuss the county's participation in the National Flood Insurance Program. And so this is a heads up to the board.
Okay.
It's going to be in the Community Development Conference Room, which is going to be very crowded, so I wouldn't suggest the entire board go there, but I'm sure you're welcome if you want to go there. They want to, there's several topics for compliance with the federal flood insurance issue that they want to discuss with the planning department. And according to this, I think I have the same communication you do there. So it's more of a heads up and awareness. And Dave Pastizo is the contact person for the county, so I'm sure they'll report to us.
All right. And the final thing is this letter that we received from Sue Schuler about her retirement. And we fairly frequently give some recognition to people that have put in long service on their departure. We have something planned on this?
I'm not aware that the department is planning that.
Okay. All right. That concludes my comments for today.
Bill? Okay. The EMSOC, the Emergency Medical Services Oversight Committee, I'm on that committee, but I never get notification, Russ. How do you?
Via email.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm apparently not on their list. This is Thursday at the CalWorks. Is where they meet?
No, this particular meeting is being scheduled at the what do they call them? The classroom buildings at the hospital.
Really?
What time?
That is, let's see, 6 p.m. And I've received some communication on that. I don't know, I wouldn't really call it completely cast in stone necessarily, but there are some possibility of some further reductions in their car coverage.
Well, there is. I wanted to discuss that. And by the way, I have no board-appointed responsibilities this week, but with regard to, you're talking about the ambulance service, and I'm sure there'll be a topic of discussion, and they have decided to eliminate the 12-hour cover car that is normally housed in McCullough Hill to back up others. According to the manager there, Mr. Lennox, they're running about $100,000 in the red. Call volume is down 25 to 30%. And so, as a business decision, they're eliminating that car. They're also eliminating a 12-hour car in Amador. So it's across the board. They've got the same experience over there. The call volume is down, and therefore the revenue is down. Although they do collect a higher percentage of their revenue in Amador than they do here, but this cut is across the board because of the downturn in business. And so I'm sure that'll be a item of discussion. You have something, right?
Just when I have something I want to ask Brent.
Okay. And so anyway, you're absolutely right. That's the 12-hour cover vehicle that is supposed to fill in when other vehicles have a call. And to reiterate, it's because they've got a 25 to 30% reduction in calls in both counties. The driveway issue you discussed is being discussed mostly by people from CAL FIRE, of course, but people in Rita's district. But other people have issues there. I'm sure in Steve's district you're quite mountainous, and even down in District 1, there are a lot of driveway issues with regard to the slope. The difference is there's just a little bit more room. There's not as many older subdivisions in the lower part of the county that have this problem, but the newer ones certainly do, so a policy needs to be arrived at. And I think I went to one meeting from Rita, there's been one since then, and I think they're working towards a solution that will hopefully compromise the concerns of property owners, realtors, developers. But most importantly to me and the CAL FIRE is the safety of the emergency responding personnel to negotiate these steep driveways. And so that seems to be the sticking point with the state of California, and it's a sticking point for me as well. That's all I need to say today. So
Thank you, Bill. Marita, did you have an additional question?
Brent, are we planning on a 6-month where we are on the budget? I was listening to the radio on the way down about what they're doing, and of course they're looking at across the board. Elizabeth Hill doesn't recommend that, but looking at doing salary freezes, hiring freezes, and so forth in Sacramento. And I just thought maybe I really like that 6-month one if we're planning it.
As I was going to report when I get to mine.
Sorry. Okay, never mind.
Okay.
Let them answer later.
Okay, Tom?
I have a couple meetings this week. Tonight I'll be at the City Council meeting with Bob Dean of CCWD to advocate that the City Council support LAFCO's request to have CCWD have a permanent seat on the LAFCO Commission. I will also be at a City Council meeting tomorrow night, Wednesday night, on the configuration of the intersection at the end of Old Main Street where 4 and 49 divide. So I'll be at those two meetings this week.
Thank you, Tom. I have a Wednesday 2 p.m. meeting in Sonora for the Motherlode Job Training Board. We'll be attending the Parks and Rec Commission meeting that evening in San Andreas, for the CHIPS Board meeting on Thursday. I have a couple of comments on 2 issues. One, Russ had raised the issue of tires, and I guess if you're looking for heads nodding, mine is. I think that we have a lot of work to do in this county to try to get things out of the waste stream and into reuse, and there's a great deal of new economy to this, given the record price of metal, recycled metals, the high cost of auto parts, the sheer volume of materials that we have can either be seen as a burden or as a set of assets, and I'm not sure we're capitalizing as fully on those assets as we might for an economy that could sure use a boost. Not to mention that a lot of these things just make it a nicer place to live anyways. So I want to encourage both the use of tires, but also we find that in wealthier sections of this county, people are throwing out things because they turned out to be the wrong color, or maybe it went out of style, whereas in other places in the county people are doing completely without those appliances, and that we have a tremendous also amount of wood and building materials that are simply being piled up in the landfills. So my goal would be to try to develop reuse centers, which I know there are proposals right now that Public Works is preparing for us, but I want to make sure that people are ready to receive those favorably when they come. Secondly, I view with alarm the closing of ambulance services and the diminishing of, it's not just closing, a lot of our time that was really devoted in West Point is now, that car is found over in Amador County, and that the proposed closure of McCulney Hill would result in essentially the same arrangement we had before we got the new provider. And I worry that only a couple of years after the fact that we have reverted to either the same or less actual coverage. Response times in the upcountry and the whole philosophy of ambulance services has undergone some change over the last 30 years in California. Originally, they bunched up where the money was, where the accidents happened on the main intersections where there was likely to be a crash. You'd have 2 or 3 companies, racing to the scene to pick up somebody. In a more civilized approach, many counties ultimately determined to end the ambulance wars and try to distribute services as equally as possible, which meant that some more remote areas would at least have some shot at similar response times to the more densely populated areas, in order to make sure that just because you lived in one part of the county, you weren't suffering adverse medical response. What's happening right now is that in a almost de facto way, we're devolving to the original circumstances that we were one of the last counties actually to have ambulance wars. Now we don't have competition, but we have a sole provider that's going back to the original deployments that were more similar to the ambulance war deployments, and I find that to be contrary to the interests of my jurisdiction, and hope that we can press. I know you can't get blood from a rock, and that there are economic circumstances that must be considered, but I want to make sure that the voices of the more rural parts of this county are heard loud and clear, and that our interests are at least equalized as best as possible. I can't make it to the MSOC meeting because I have another commitment, but I would very much hope that our representatives would raise these questions in the strongest possible way. And that's all I have to say.
On that particular subject, granted I'm new to all this, but it is of particular interest to me looking at the Ebbets Pass model. I don't know I don't know the particulars about their funding source, but I was recently told that they have the ability to put, with their forces that they have there, with their trained emergency medical technicians and stuff, that they can put, they're cross-trained. They can be a fireman or emergency medical technician. They can have 5 ambulances on the road in Ebbets Pass, and that's absolutely remarkable.
We pay.
They pay for it.
Yes, that is.
Paid.
Well,
We voted on it.
They have a full-time paid public safety department that they pay for.
Well, it's a model that may be worth reviewing at some point. I would add one thing to my comments, which is that you can tell the difference in service simply by the response times. We had a young woman who was her horse fell on her, and she was pinned under it, and we had an ambulance in West Point, and it got there in time to save her life. When it's stationed there, it makes a difference, and it's concrete. We have had recently the opposite situation in which people, when we don't know, I'm sure that it might not have been determinative, but we have people who actually passed away with an ambulance coming from Amador County in Pine Grove, taking as much as a half hour to get to the scene. I don't believe that emergency services matter much when breathing or heart stops after about 5 to 6 minutes, which is why the stationing of the ambulance in West Point and Moke Hill are so important to the people there. Anyway, I believe we're now ready for comments from our esteemed CAO.
I'll let you know I did RSVP for the 4 of you minus Marita for the RCRC annual dinner, which is a week from tomorrow in Sacramento.
Is that next week?
Yes.
It's on the 23rd.
You have an RCRC meeting next week.
Breakneck speed
I
here.
thought you wrote goody.
I'm trying to read my handwriting here. Oh, Bob will be here next week, and we'll be attending his first meeting. We did discuss, Russ had raised the issue about having him sit up here during the meeting, but after talking to him, he'd prefer to sit in the audience and observe for the first meeting. So maybe we'll have a ceremonial passing of the name tags or something at the end of it, but he will be here.
He's not going to get paid for that day, is he?
He actually does.
Oh.
Are we doing a reception next week or not?
As I was going on, we will be having a reception in the morning before it starts at 8:15, correct?
No.
Cookies and donuts and that kind of healthy food.
High protein?
But I did spend a day with with Bob on Wednesday last week. Was very pleased and very encouraged. I think you picked a very good person. I'm from my jaded viewpoint, I'm very happy with your selection. He's very bright. He's got a sense of humor. Took him down and he had an interview with the Enterprise, which then was in the paper last week, and I think he presents himself very well. He's very bright. As to the budget issue, we did give him a copy of the just released budget, which you all have. Copy of what was done last year in terms of the mid-year report, and he and Shirley had some preliminary discussions, but he seems to be very oriented and keyed into that system of doing a mid-year review and plotting from there. I gave him my own personal view that, and I think he's in agreement with it, that the emphasis needs to be placed on the preliminary budget, not the final budget, which I think you've kind of gone the other way over time. That's an easy thing to do, but in my opinion, and particularly during tough times, you need to really put the effort in the preliminary budget, because if you're going to make cuts or whatever, you don't want to wait that 3 months into the year, because the cuts then become more severe to make up for the cuts that you didn't make in the first 3 months of the year. When you have a lot of money, maybe it's a little bit different. But there's no doubt you're going to have some budget issues. Tomorrow I will be in Sacramento along with Shirley and along with Bob at a CIO meeting with the Department of Finance over the budget to go over it. Sometimes those are good and give insight beyond what's printed. Sometimes, quite frankly, they're a waste of time. It depends on who finance sends and how frank they are in their discussions. But I will report back to you next week on that. There are 2 versions of review of the budget that I think are pretty good floating around. One's by CSEC, one's by RCRC. They both give you a slightly different view of what's going on with the budget. But there's no question there are huge hits and huge cuts coming out there. There are those who think that the governor is posturing so that he can, a la Gray Davis, kind of pull back somewhat down the line or set the stage for tax increases down the line. Based on my exposure, there's no similarity between Gray Davis and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And so I think in my view, it's wrong to guess what he's going to do based on what Gray Davis did when he was there. There's no question there will be changes in the budget beyond what he's recommended. That's just the process. I'll also tell you, as a practical matter, if I learned nothing in Sacramento, nothing happens from now until about the middle of April. There's lots of dancing, but the music never quite starts. They just keep dancing, waiting for the real music. Music starts in April or May, and that's when you'll see whatever realistically is going to happen with the budget. In terms of how we are this year, that's what the mid-year report is about. As I told you when I came, I'm here at a time when there's not really too much I can do to give you an observation about the budget. The key will be what assumptions were made on revenue. My point has always been you can control cost, but you can't control the revenue. And so if the revenue goes in the toilet, it's not like you can snap your finger and make it go back up. If costs are a problem, you can cut the costs and you can react to that. So I'll be very curious to see how we're doing on sales tax and property transfer tax relative to what the estimates were that were in the budget when it was adopted. There's no doubt all of those are going to be down from last year. The question is, what were the assumptions in the budget? And I don't know the answer to that. I was asked at the department head meeting a week ago about the rumor of freezes on filling position, whatever. My comment was that rumor isn't coming from me because I haven't looked into it, but it would be silly to think that isn't a possibility that's going to occur in the next month or two, particularly after you get your mid-year report. That's all I have at this point.
Thank you, Brent. Jim? Adeline? All right, this public session is now at an end, and we are headed for closed sessions, three of them.
Where are we going to go to lunch?
I would also remind people that we have study sessions this afternoon in this venue, one for developing guidelines for California land conservation contracts and ag preserves, and secondly, that's at 1:30, and at 2:30 we have a study session regarding the Prop 40 update regarding Parks and Rec.
Is this board going to lunch?
And is this board going to lunch?
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
going to lunch.